There's a sickness running through the world today. It doesn't show up in your blood. It shows up in your calendar. It shows up in your racing heart, your exhausted mind, your to-do list that never dies, your inbox that mocks you at midnight. It's not a virus. It's not failure. It's something much more subtle. Something that looks like progress, but leaves you empty. Busyness. We wear it like a badge. We brag about it at dinner. We confuse motion with meaning. But busyness is not the same as effectiveness. Busyness is noise. Effectiveness is music. Busyness keeps you occupied. Effectiveness keeps you aligned. And if you don't learn to tell the difference, you'll spend your entire life spinning in circles faster and faster until one day you collapse from exhaustion and realize you never actually moved forward. Because busyness is addictive. It makes you feel important. It makes you look impressive. But it keeps you from your real power. Because power isn't how many things you can juggle. Power is how many things you can eliminate. Power is focus. Power is clarity. Power is choosing depth over distraction. You don't get paid for how many hours you work. You get paid for how effective those hours are. You don't win because your schedule is full. You win because your work moves mountains. And if what you're doing isn't moving anything, if it's just activity without results, then you're not working. You're hiding. You're hiding behind the illusion of effort. Because deep down, you're afraid to slow down. You're afraid that if you slow down, the truth will catch up to you. The truth that you've been busy, but not productive. The truth that you've been reacting, but not creating. The truth that you've been chasing low-level tasks instead of high-impact transformation. But you can change that now. You can decide right now to stop being busy and start being brutally effective. And it starts with a question, a dangerous question, a question most people are too scared to ask. Is what I'm doing actually working? Not, does it keep me occupied? Not, does it make me look successful? But, does it matter? Because until you ask that question, until you audit your time with ruthless honesty, you'll stay stuck in the hamster wheel of performance, never touching the life you were actually built to live. You weren't built for endless hustle. You weren't built to wake up tired and fall asleep numb. You weren't built to drown in meetings, messages, and mediocrity. You were built to create. You were built to lead. You were built to build something that lasts. And none of that comes from being busy. It comes from being effective. So, how do you do it? How do you become more than busy? You get clear, crystal clear, because clarity kills confusion, and confusion is the god of busyness. When you don't know what matters most, everything feels urgent, and urgency is a liar. It rushes you. It pressures you. It tricks you into chasing volume over value. But clarity? Clarity quiets the room. Clarity slows your heartbeat. Clarity reminds you, most of what you think is important isn't. And that's where your freedom begins. When you realize that success is not about doing more. It's about doing less better. Fewer distractions. Fewer obligations. Fewer things that dilute your genius. And more impact. More intention. More focus on the few things that change everything. Because that's the secret every high performer eventually learns. Success is not found in the number of things you do. Success is found in the weight of the things you choose to do. And the deeper truth? If you're always busy, it's probably because you're avoiding something. Avoiding depth. Avoiding reflection. Avoiding the hard conversations and real priorities that actually stretch you. Because busyness is safe. It feels like progress without the pain of true growth. But effectiveness? Effectiveness demands courage. It demands that you say no. It demands that you pause, that you plan, that you cut the noise and confront the hard truth. You can't keep living like this. You can't keep chasing tasks like trophies. You can't keep burning time on things that don't build you. You have one life, And if it's going to mean anything, it has to be effective. Because deep down, you already know. You feel it in your bones, the weight of wasted hours. You feel it when the day ends and your soul is still starving, not because you didn't work hard, but because you didn't work right. You ran the race. You crossed off the list. You answered the calls. You responded to the noise. You survived the day, but you didn't move the needle. And that's the difference between being busy and being legendary. Because legendary doesn't come from chaos. It comes from clarity followed by execution. It comes from saying, I'm done with distractions disguised as duties. I'm done with activity that looks good but leads nowhere. I'm done pretending that full calendars mean fulfilled lives. Being effective means making bold decisions. It means eliminating the things that drain your brilliance. It means refusing to sacrifice your calling for convenience. It means identifying the one or two things, the real things that build your legacy and going all in on them. Not multitasking, not grinding on 50 fronts, not reacting to everyone else's fire. Just pure, deliberate force applied to what truly matters. That's how results compound. That's how empires rise. That's how average descend mastery is born. Because when you stop being busy, you start building something real. And that scares people. Because most people need the illusion of busy to avoid the responsibility of becoming. But not you. Not anymore. You've outgrown the disguise. You've outgrown the cluttered life. You've outgrown the false pride of saying, I'm just so busy. Because busy is not a badge, it's a blindfold. It keeps you from seeing the truth. That your time is a weapon. That your focus is a currency. That your energy is a limited resource, and you've been spending it like it's infinite. But from this moment on, everything changes. From this moment on, you no longer wake up and wait to see who demands your attention. You design your day like your destiny depends on it because it does. You no longer react. You create. You no longer say yes to everyone. You say yes to the mission. And if that makes you misunderstood, good. If that makes you less available, good. If that makes you quieter, sharper, more focused, more dangerous to the forces of average, good. Because effectiveness requires isolation. It requires decision. It requires that you leave the crowd of busy behind and walk alone toward alignment. And that walk, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Because at the end of it, you won't just have a list of tasks. You'll have transformation. You'll have results that speak for you. You'll have a life that's not full but fulfilled. And the next time someone asks what you've been up to, you won't say, just busy. You'll smile with calm power and say, just being effective. Because that shift, that internal shift is where power begins. When you stop measuring your day by what you did and start measuring it by what moved, what advanced, what deepened, what grew you, what broke patterns and built momentum, you begin to realize the goal was never to get everything done. The goal was to get the right things done, to act in such ruthless alignment that your effort becomes sacred, your schedule becomes sovereign, your presence becomes rare. Because now you don't run around doing, you move with direction, and the world feels it. You no longer have to talk about your priorities. Your effectiveness proves them. It's in the way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you protect your time, the way you say no without apology and yes without hesitation. That's what effectiveness gives you: clarity without conflict. You stop wrestling with your conscience because your calendar finally agrees with your calling. And that peace, that precision, it cannot be bought. It must be built. One aligned action at a time. One ruthless no at a time. One moment of presence at a time. This is where the real work begins, not in doing more, but in refining. Refining your focus. Refining your routines. Refining your rituals until what you do every day is no longer random, it's rhythmic. Until every hour serves a purpose. and every task has a place, and your mind is no longer scattered but sharp. That's what separates a day that drains you from a day that develops you. So audit everything, not just what you do, but why you do it. Not just how you work, but who it's really serving. Because most people aren't working for their future. They're working for their fears. Afraid to slow down. Afraid to say no. Afraid to focus because focus forces them to confront how much of their energy has been wasted. But you've seen it now. You've felt the difference between motion and meaning. You've felt what happens when a single hour of intention produces more than a week of scattered effort. You've tasted the fire of effectiveness. And you'll never settle for busy again. You're done wearing exhaustion as proof of work. You're done mistaking urgency for importance. You're done sprinting nowhere. From this point forward, your life is not a flurry, it is a force. You are not scattered. You are surgical. You are not productive. You are precise, and your days are no longer a reaction. They are a revelation. Because the person you've always wanted to be, they weren't hiding in a longer to-do list. They were hiding in the focused execution of the essentials. And now, you don't just feel productive. You feel powerful. You feel present. You feel undeniable. Then we finish this the way it was meant to be finished, not with a whisper, but with a declaration. Because from this moment forward, you are no longer just moving. You are mastering. You are no longer just checking boxes. You are creating impact. You are no longer chasing the illusion of progress. You are delivering results. And your life? It's no longer built on the number of hours you fill. It's built on the intensity of your focus, the purity of your priorities, the power of your presence. You don't leave your greatness up to chance. You engineer it. You schedule it. You make space for it every single day because it's not a hope, it's a habit. It's not an inspiration, it's a system. And the system is simple. Do less, but do it better. Think deeper. Move slower. Decide faster. Protect your energy like it's oxygen, because it is. You don't let people pull you into their chaos. You don't let shiny objects hijack your flow. You don't let fear disguise itself as just staying busy, because you've upgraded now. You've evolved. You've crossed over from effort into effectiveness. And what you'll build from here? It won't just impress people. It'll influence them. It'll wake them up. Because when you live this way clear, focused, aligned, effective, you become evidence. You become proof that a peaceful life is not a passive one. It's a powerful one, a deliberate one, a disciplined one, where your calendar reflects your values, where your habits reflect your standards, where your schedule reflects your spirit. So don't just be busy. Be effective. Don't just hustle. Move with holy precision. Don't just wake up and hope today turns out right. Make it right. Build it. Shape it. Protect it. And let the world feel the ripple of a life that no longer scatters itself for attention, but concentrates itself into transformation. Because you're no longer running in circles. You are advancing with fire. You are no longer proud of being busy. You are committed to being legendary. And that changes everything. It doesn't take much to kill a dream. You don't need a tragedy. You don't need betrayal. You don't even need failure. All it takes is an excuse. One quiet, rational, believable excuse. And before you know it, the thing you were born to do, the thing you felt in your bones, the thing that lit your soul on fire, that thing dies. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. Excuses are elegant killers. They come dressed as logic. They speak the language of reason. They wear the face of safety, of timing, of when things calm down. But make no mistake, they are thieves. Thieves of power. Thieves of peace. Thieves of potential. And the most dangerous part, they don't come from the outside. They come from within, from the same mind that created the dream, From the same voice that once said, I was made for more. Because every excuse has one mission: to make you comfortable with being less. Less than you could be. Less than you said you'd be. Less than you were born to be. And they always sound so reasonable. I'm just tired right now. I need more information. Maybe next month. I don't want to risk too much. But here's the truth, burn this into your soul. Failure doesn't destroy dreams. Excuses do. Failure is feedback. Failure is refinement. Failure is the price of becoming. But excuses? Excuses are permission to remain small. They don't teach you anything. They don't grow you. They don't stretch your limits. They just delay your destiny. And the longer you let them live, the deeper they dig into your identity, until you're no longer someone who had a dream. You're someone who used to. So stop worshiping comfort. Stop giving your excuses a seat at the table. They haven't earned it. They haven't paid the price. They haven't shown up at 5 a.m. They haven't bled for the vision. But you have. You have felt the call. You have seen the mountain. You have glimpsed the person you could become. Don't let that version of you starve just because your current self is scared. Because that fear, that's not weakness. That's a signal. A signal that you're standing at the edge of growth. And the edge is always uncomfortable. That's why so few cross it. But those who do, they learn the greatest truth of all. The cost of pursuing your dream is nothing compared to the cost of making excuses. Because the pain of discipline lasts a moment. The pain of regret lasts a lifetime. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. But you do have to move. You do have to try. You do have to choose action over avoidance. Because action builds courage. Action silences doubt. Action proves to your mind that you are not a slave. To excuses, you are a leader of your own life. And leaders don't negotiate with mediocrity. Leaders don't delay greatness. Leaders don't wait for a sign, they become the signal. So what will you be? Another excuse in a world full of reasons? Or a force that refuses to let fear dress up as wisdom? The dream is still alive. But it's waiting for you to stop making excuses and start making moves. Because the moment you stop making excuses is the moment everything changes. The moment you silence the voice that says, not today, and replace it with, today is the only day. The moment you stop asking for the perfect condition and become the perfect decision. That is where transformation begins, not when you feel ready, but when you act anyway. Because readiness is not a feeling, it is a consequence. It comes after action, not before, never before. And that's why so many people live their lives preparing for a race they'll never run. They read the books. They watch the videos. They organize the workspace. They buy the gear. They gather information like hoarders of potential. But they never take the first step. Because deep down, they're waiting for fear to go away. But here's the secret. Fear doesn't leave. It listens. It listens to your patterns. It listens to your movements. And when it sees that your actions are louder than your doubts, it quiets. Not because you destroyed it, but because you outgrew it. Excuses thrive in silence. They breed in hesitation. They grow in the empty space between what you said you'd do and what you actually did. But when that space disappears, when your intention and your execution match, there's no more room for excuses to hide. They suffocate under the weight of your discipline. Because now you're not just dreaming, you're doing. You're no longer a prisoner of perfection. You're no longer negotiating with fear. You're walking into your greatness, step by step, hour by hour, decision by decision. And as you do, something strange begins to happen. The world starts to shift. Doors open. People take notice. Opportunities begin to orbit around your nomina because you're lucky, but because you've become undeniable. And all of it because you made one radical choice: to stop telling yourself stories that sabotage your destiny, to stop letting later rob you of now, to stop living in the shadows of what could have been and step fully into what must be. And that choice, it wasn't easy. It was essential because your excuses were never honest. They were just easier to accept than the pain of responsibility. But you've grown past that now. You've looked your excuses in the eye and said, I'm done with you. I'm done pretending you're protection. I'm done mistaking you for strategy. I choose movement. I choose mission. I choose me. And now the dream that once flickered burns. Because when the fire is real, you don't need permission. You don't wait for the perfect mood, the right lighting, the applause. You move because you must. You show up because anything less feels like betrayal. Not to others, but to yourself. Because once you've seen what you're capable of truly seeing it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending that excuses are acceptable. You can't go back to numbing your potential with comfort. You can't go back to shrinking your vision just to fit into a routine that was never meant to contain you. Because now you've tasted ownership. You've stood on the edge of your limitations and pushed forward anyway. And that taste, it's addictive. It makes everything else feel hollow. The distractions, the drama, the fake urgency, the mindless scrolling, the meetings with no meaning, the habits that suck your soul dry, they all feel offensive now because they cost you something sacred, time that could have been invested in becoming. So now, instead of excuses, you build evidence. Instead of reasons, you build results. Instead of doubt, you build discipline. And people will notice. They won't always understand. They'll say, you've changed. Yes. Yes, you have. Because staying the same was killing you slowly. Because making excuses was dimming your light. Because every time you chose comfort over conviction, a piece of your fire went cold. And you've had enough. You've buried too many dreams already. You've watched too many, maybe one days turn into never happened. You've heard the stories of people who waited and died with their greatness still locked inside them. That will not be your story. Not because you're fearless, but because you've chosen something greater than fear. Responsibility. You've chosen to look your potential in the eye and say, I will not leave you behind. You've chosen to show up for the vision even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's lonely, because excuses don't survive in that kind of climate. They melt under the heat of consistency. They dissolve in the presence of purpose. And now you carry that presence, not because you were born with it, but because you built it, one decision at a time, one no more at a time. One day where you showed up anyway, just to prove to yourself, I'm done letting excuses run my life. Then let's finish this with the fire it deserves. Because you didn't come this far to stay almost. You didn't walk through pain, through setbacks, through every ounce of self-doubt, just to arrive at the edge and let an excuse talk you down. You came to rise. You came to build. You came to become. And if there's anything standing between you and the life you know is yours, it's not the world, it's not the system, it's not the timing. It's the tiny voice inside that whispers, not today. You're not ready. You're not enough. That voice is the excuse. And it sounds like a suggestion, but it's a sentence. Every time you listen to it, a part of your strength withers. Every time you obey it, a door closes that might never open again. Every time you surrender to it, you trade who you could become for who you were afraid to stop being. But that trade ends today because you finally see it for what it is. Excuses aren't innocent. They're weapons of mass distraction. They don't just delay action. They dismantle identity, but not yours. Not anymore. Because now you walk in clarity. Now you walk in conviction. Now, every step you take is backed by a soul that's decided, I will not die with my dreams still in me. I will not tell my children stories about what I almost did. I will not carry this fire and let it go cold because I was too scared to be uncomfortable. You've buried enough potential in the name of someday. You've delayed enough greatness for a better time. You've made enough excuses dressed in the clothing of logic, when deep down you knew they were lies. Lies meant to keep you safe. Lies meant to keep you still. Lies meant to keep you small. But now you've grown too much to pretend. Now, your standards are louder than your fears. Now your habits are stronger than your hesitation. Now, your actions speak so loudly that excuses no longer have a voice in your story. Because this is your story now. Written in courage, paved with discipline, built on days where you wanted to quit but didn't. This is your life. Not the one you hoped for, not the one you explained, but the one you built with no excuses. And that life, it's waiting, not in the distance, but in the next decision. So choose and make it final, because the world doesn't need another reason why you couldn't. It needs a living, breathing example of what happens when someone finally says, enough, no more excuses. I choose to rise. And that someone is you. There is a momentum, heavy, electric, when life stands still. Not because you're at peace, but because you're paralyzed, caught in the web of your own mind, staring at the door of opportunity, knowing it leads somewhere greater, but not moving, not even reaching for the handle, because you're thinking and thinking and thinking. Endless loops of what if, what now, what might go wrong, what if I fail, what if they laugh, what if I'm not ready, what if it doesn't work, what if it does? But nothing changes, because thought without motion is just a maze. And most people, brilliant, gifted, overflowing with potential, die in that maze. Not because they were weak, but because they worshiped certainty. They waited for every light to turn green, every dot to connect, every fear to disappear. But life doesn't reward the thinker. It rewards the mover, because action solves more problems than overthinking ever could. Action doesn't need permission. Action doesn't need perfection. Action doesn't ask for applause. It just moves. And in that movement, it creates momentum. And in that momentum, it creates clarity. Because clarity is not something you get before you move, it's something you earn by moving. You will never think your way into a perfect life, but you can act your way into one. Because action teaches. It exposes the real problems, the real fears, the real resistance. It cuts through illusion. It confronts the lie that you're not ready by showing you, step by step, that you've been ready this whole time. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're finally willing to find them on the road. And yes, action will be messy. It will be awkward. You will stumble. You will start before you feel ready. And some people will watch and judge and laugh. But that's only because they're still stuck in the same prison you just walked out of. The prison of paralysis. The prison of potential without performance. The prison of I could that never becomes I did. But not you. Not anymore. Because now you understand the truth that sets the doers apart from the dreamers. You don't rise when you know more. You rise when you move more. You don't need another book, another course, another motivational speech. You need a step, one move in the direction of your destiny, one phone call, one email, one sentence written, one rep, one ask, one attempt, and then another, because consistent, imperfect action will beat perfect, delayed action every time. Perfection is the enemy. It tells you to wait, to tweak, to polish, to delay until everything feels aligned. But alignment doesn't come from stillness. It comes from the friction of doing, from learning on the battlefield, not in the bleachers, from realizing that every fear you had was smaller than the momentum you created. Because momentum is magic. It silences the voices. It drowns out doubt. It makes problems smaller and possibilities bigger. And suddenly you're not thinking anymore. You're building. You're leading. You're becoming. Because the version of you that you dream about, they don't live in your mind. They live on the other side of action. Because that version of you, the one with fire in their voice and purpose in their stride, they weren't waiting. They were moving. They weren't trapped in questions. They were writing answers with their feet. Because every step forward rewrites the narrative. Every move made in faith, not in fear, dismantles the lie that you need to figure it all out before you begin. No, you figure it out by beginning, by stepping into the unknown, not to conquer it, but to walk with it, to meet uncertainty with urgency, to meet resistance with relentless rhythm. Because resistance isn't a stop sign. It's a signal. It's proof that you're getting close to something real. And you either meet it with overthinking or you punch through it with movement. You don't need the answers. You need the courage to ask better questions while you walk. You need the faith to believe that the next step is enough, even if you can't see the one after that. You need the grit to say, I'll take action anyway, even when your voice shakes, even when your knees wobble, because motion builds mastery. And mastery doesn't come from certainty. It comes from confronting chaos and doing it anyway. The world doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who move, not recklessly, not blindly, but with intention, with trust, with the inner fire that says, I will not die wondering who I could have been. I will not sit here paralyzed while my life waits for me to wake up. I will not watch another day pass with my dream locked in the dungeon of delay. Because dreams do not belong in your imagination. They belong in reality. And reality is shaped by actions, not thoughts. By sweat, not speculation. By hours invested, not theories perfected. So ask yourself no, and answer honestly. What's the one move I've been thinking about, waiting on, delaying, and then do it? Right now, not tomorrow, not when it feels good, not when the stars align. Because stars don't align for the passive, they align for the persistent. Those who show the universe they are serious by moving before the miracle, by taking the first swing, by making the first leap, by sending the message, writing the chapter, launching the product, asking for the sale, recording the video, quitting the excuse. And yes, you'll feel fear. But fear is not your enemy. Inaction is. Because inaction feeds fear. But action feeds freedom. And you right now, you are one decision away from freedom. Will you think or will you move? Then let us press deeper into the fire, into the forge, into the furnace where all waiting dies and becoming begins. Because what if you stopped trying to avoid mistakes and started chasing momentum? What if you accepted that pain is part of the path and started moving through it instead of thinking around it? What if every excuse that has held you back, every delay dressed up as just being thoughtful, was exposed for what it really is? A thief. Because that's what overthinking is, a thief of time, of talent, of trust in yourself. It robs you of the only moment that ever mattered. This one, this moment right here, where something inside you is begging for permission to act, to rise, to stop being the person who's about to, and finally become the person who does. That doesn't mean reckless motion. It means radical responsibility. It means choosing to no longer let fear set the schedule for your future. To no longer hand over your time, your talent, your truth to endless planning and rehearsing and rewriting the script before you ever step onto the stage. The stage is now. And every second you don't act is a second that faith in yourself gets weaker. Because faith is not something you feel before you move. It's something you build by moving. Every time you take the action, even the small one, especially the small one, you send a message to yourself. I am not helpless. I am not paralyzed. I am not waiting for a sign. I am becoming the sign. Because action doesn't just solve problems, it dissolves lies. The lie that says you're not ready. The lie that says you need more time. The lie that says you're too late. You're not too late. You're right on time, but you're out of excuses. The world isn't waiting for your plan. It's waiting for your presence. Not the perfect version of you, the one that shows up anyway. The one who walks into the fire not because it's easy, but because you are done sitting on your potential like it's furniture. You are done holding back your voice like it's a luxury. You are done pretending that more thinking will save you. It won't. Only doing will. You want to fix your confidence? Move. You want to build self-trust? Act. You want to gain clarity? Start. You want to separate yourself from the crowd? Decide. Because most people are stuck not because they lack talent, but because they refuse to take the first ugly, awkward, imperfect step. But not you. Not anymore. You are no longer ruled by fear. You are refined by it. You are no longer paralyzed by pressure. You are powered by it. Because now you understand. Action is the cure. Because this is the breakthrough you've been postponing. It was never buried in a book. It was never waiting in a podcast, a guru, or a course. It was waiting in the decision you refused to make. The first call, the real conversation, the launch you kept delaying, the apology you've drafted 100 times but never spoken, the boundary you knew had to be drawn, the morning you promised to start, and every time you delayed it, every time you chose analysis over execution, you taught your nervous system something dangerous. That hesitation is safety, but it's not. Hesitation is a slow death. It's the poison disguised as planning. It makes you believe you're preparing, but you're just procrastinating. You're dressing up fear in a tuxedo of logic. And the longer you do it, the heavier it becomes. Until it's no longer, I'll start soon. And it's, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But that's the lie. That's the moment when average takes over right, when your breakthrough was begging for action. But you're done with that now. You are done giving your power to delay. You are done letting emotion dictate execution. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive your dream becomes. You don't get to keep it without paying in time and energy and integrity. And the price is compounding. Every moment you don't act every opportunity, you let pass adds interest to the cost of becoming. But when you move, when you finally choose to stop thinking and start doing, everything shifts. Not just your results, your identity. You become the kind of person who moves anyway, who doesn't need certainty to be committed, who doesn't need applause to stay accountable, who doesn't need to feel perfect to act with power. That's what action does. It rewires your reality. And suddenly, where there was fog, there's focus. Where there was pressure, there's presence. Where there was doubt, there's dominion. Because now you are no longer a prisoner to what if. Now you're walking into what's next. And it all began not with a perfect plan, but with one act of defiance against delay, one movement that said, I will no longer be held hostage by hesitation. I will no longer bow to the fear that wants me small. I will rise to do not because I feel ready, but because I've decided I won't leave this life untouched. That is your line in the sand. And the moment you cross it, you don't just start something, you become someone. Then let's finish this with the thunder it deserves. Because there comes a time in every person's life where they must choose to be the thinker or the mover, to be the one who wonders or the one who walks, to be the one with the brilliant ideas buried in notebooks, or the one whose fingerprints are on something real. That time is now. No more rewrites. No more rehearsals. No more waiting until the fear goes away. You don't need to feel fearless. You just need to move while you're afraid. You don't need a 10-step plan. You just need to take the first step like your life depends on it. Because it does. Because you weren't given breath to analyze your calling. You were given breath to answer it. To say yes. To say now. To move before you feel ready. Because that's what leaders do. That's what legends do. That's what the version of you that you keep dreaming about does. They don't pause for fear. They don't negotiate with excuses. They don't wait for certainty to bless their decisions. They act. And every action they take becomes a brick in the bridge between who they were and who they were born to be. That bridge, it's not made of ideas. It's made of days like today. Days where you show up anyway. Days where you run toward the hard thing. Days where you stop choosing what's easy and start choosing what builds you. That's how you get there. Not by thinking harder. Not by overanalyzing. Not by reading another strategy. But by moving when it counts. By choosing progress over perfection. By deciding that action is the only permission you'll ever need. And from this day forward, that's who you are. You are the person who moves. You are the person who does. You are the person who acts. And when people ask you how you made it happen, how you built the life, the business, the health, the peace, the power, you'll look them in the eye and say, I stopped thinking about it, and I started moving. That's what changed everything. And now, everything has changed.